Omar and Nadia Al Safir seemed like Dubai's perfect power couple, but when Omar's affair with a young Filipina named Clarisse Ramos was exposed, jealousy turned deadly, and one sip of tea would change everything forever. Dubai shimmered under the relentless desert sun, a city where glass towers stretched like giants and every street whispered wealth and ambition. Among its glittering elite lived Omar Al Safir, a man whose name alone opened doors. He had built a real estate empire that stretched from the marina to the outskirts of the city, and his lifestyle reflected every ounce of the fortune he had accumulated. Luxury cars, private jets, and penthouse suites were only the surface of his world, a world that seemed untouchable to outsiders. His wife, Nadia Al Safir, was equally renowned. To the public, she was elegance personified, attending high-profile charity events, art exhibitions, and gala dinners. Her presence commanded attention, and she moved through Dubai society like a queen, her smile polished, her demeanor flawless. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming in her seemingly perfect life. Nadia had always trusted Omar implicitly, believing in the vows and promises that came with marriage. Yet, subtle changes began to disturb her. Late-night meetings with no explanation, whispered phone calls quickly ended when she entered the room, and sudden trips abroad that he claimed were business. A sense of unease grew within her, a quiet suspicion that something was being hidden. Then came the rumors, faint, almost imperceptible, but persistent. Colleagues and hotel staff mentioned a young woman, a Filipina working in one of Omar's properties, who seemed to be spending more and more time with him. At first, Nadia dismissed it as idle gossip, imagining that the city's love for scandal had created stories out of nothing. But the whispers kept coming, and her heart sank each time she caught a glimpse of Omar checking his phone or returning home with faint traces of perfume that she didn't recognize. What had once been a marriage built on trust now carried the heavy shadow of suspicion, and Nadia felt a cold realization settle over her. The life she had carefully constructed. Clarisse Ramos had arrived in Dubai with dreams of a better life, leaving behind her small hometown in the Philippines. At 26, she carried a mix of hope and determination, eager to prove herself in a city known for opportunity and excess. She had secured a position as a guest relations officer at one of Omar Al Safir's luxury hotels, a role that gave her a glimpse into a world most people could only imagine. Her natural charm, combined with her friendly demeanor, made her popular among colleagues and guests alike. She worked hard, often going above and beyond, and her professionalism caught the attention of senior management. It was during one of Omar's hotel inspections that Clarisse first encountered him. He was imposing yet magnetic, a man whose presence seemed to command the entire room. At first, their interactions were purely professional, polite exchanges about staff performance and guest experience. But as days turned into weeks, subtle moments, a lingering glance, a private conversation, a small favor extended, began to blur the line between work and something more personal. Omar, despite his wealth and status, seemed drawn to Clarisse in a way that felt deliberate, calculated, yet intoxicating. She, in turn, found herself captivated, unaware of the storm brewing outside her awareness. Their affair remained carefully hidden, a secret woven into the daily routines of the hotel. Omar made sure no one noticed, and Clarisse, trusting him, believed in the illusion of safety and protection. Meanwhile, Nadia, Omar's wife, remained distant yet observant. She sensed the shift in her husband's behavior, the late nights, the unexplained absences, the faint traces of a perfume she didn't recognize. Though she had no proof, her instincts told her something was terribly wrong. What began as curiosity soon spiraled into obsession, and she quietly resolved to uncover the truth behind the growing shadow that threatened her perfect life. Nadia's suspicion had grown too strong to ignore, and she decided to act, though cautiously. She could not afford to make a scene or confront Omar directly. Doing so might drive him further away or alert him to her awareness. Instead, she began gathering information quietly, turning her attention to the smallest details of his routine. She hired a private driver who had long served the family and could be trusted, discreetly instructing him to note Omar's movements without drawing attention. She also paid close attention to hotel staff, quietly planting questions in conversations, and observing reactions. Every small clue, every whispered comment, became a piece of the puzzle she was determined to solve. Within days, the investigation bore fruit. The driver mentioned that Omar frequently visited an apartment near Dubai Marina that was not registered under his name. Hotel staff began to hint at a young Filipina woman who had recently gained his attention, her presence noted more often in private areas of the hotel. Nadia felt a mix of dread and cold determination. She did not act rashly, choosing instead to study the woman from a distance. She learned everything she could about Clarisse Ramos, scrolling through social media profiles, observing her habits, and noting her interactions. Nadia discovered that Clarisse's life in Dubai seemed cheerful, filled with small pleasures, brunches, selfies with friends, posts about her work and aspirations. There was no hint of the storm she was about to face. Every discovery deepened Nadia's obsession. Her once trusting heart had hardened into a calculating resolve. She imagined the woman laughing, living freely, unaware of the consequences that lay ahead. The idea of another woman sharing her husband, especially one now at the center of her growing fears, festered in her mind. She knew the situation could not continue, and she began to plan how to reclaim control over a life she felt was slipping away, one careful step a day. The news of Clarisse's pregnancy hit Nadia like a physical blow. It was one thing to suspect an affair, but the idea that her husband had fathered a child with another woman was unbearable. Clarisse had been cautious, but she had confided in a few close colleagues about her situation, trusting that the information would remain private. Yet in a city like Dubai, even whispered secrets rarely stayed hidden. One of Clarisse's co-workers overheard her discussing the pregnancy and passed the information along, thinking it was harmless gossip. Within days, the details reached the wrong ears and ultimately found their way to Nadia through a trusted maid who worked in the hotel network. Nadia's blood ran cold. She did not panic. She did not scream. Instead, a dangerous calm settled over her. She understood immediately that Clarisse's pregnancy was not just a threat to her marriage, but a direct assault on her status, her reputation, and the carefully constructed image of her perfect life. The stakes had shifted from suspicion to undeniable reality. Nadia spent hours imagining scenarios, each more intense and humiliating than the last. She pictured Omar smiling at another woman, her child the living proof of his betrayal, and felt an anger so consuming it blurred everything else. Clarisse, meanwhile, remained unaware of the storm gathering around her. She trusted Omar completely and believed he would protect her and the unborn child. He had promised to provide for her, even suggesting she could safely return to the Philippines until the baby was born. But secrets in Dubai have a way of moving faster than one expects. Nadia's mind, once preoccupied with doubt, had shifted into obsession. Every smile Clarisse posted online, every photo shared with friends, became a target for Nadia's calculation. She watched silently, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, her thoughts turning darker with each passing day. The pregnancy had changed everything, and nothing would ever be th. Nadia's thoughts had shifted from anger to action. She no longer wanted simply to observe. She wanted control, and she wanted it decisively. Every day she planned with meticulous care, thinking through every detail to ensure that nothing could go wrong. She began by sourcing materials that would allow her to act discreetly. Visiting a luxury boutique under the guise of selecting gifts for friends, she ordered imported teas, expensive, rare blends that would appear innocuous in anyone's hands. Alongside that, she found a discreet pharmacist, one accustomed to supplying unusual compounds under the radar. Nadia requested a chemical that could be administered subtly, capable of causing a fatal reaction while leaving little trace. The pharmacist, unaware of her true intentions, provided it without hesitation. At home, Nadia rehearsed her plan. Her mansion, once a place of warmth and comfort, became a silent chamber for obsession. She imagined every step, from obtaining the tea to delivering it to Clarisse, considering how to make the act appear ordinary, harmless, even generous. Her elegance, her public composure, was now a mask for something far darker. To the outside world, she remained the perfect wife, attending galas, hosting luncheons, smiling for cameras, while inside, her mind was consumed with precision and revenge. Every action she took was calculated. She watched Clarisse's social media, noting routines, patterns, and times when she would be alone. The thought of humiliation, of seeing another woman bear her husband's child while she remained powerless, fueled her obsession. Pride, jealousy, and fury intertwined in her mind, forming a plan she believed was both justified and inevitable. What had begun as suspicion had now become premeditation, and Nadia was ready to move from silent observation to decisive, irreversible action. Nadia knew she needed a way to bring Clarisse into her orbit without raising suspicion. She could not confront her directly, and she could not rely on Omar to intervene. He remained oblivious to the full extent of her resolve. Instead, she devised a plan that would appear friendly, even generous, but carried a hidden purpose. Using her connections, she arranged for Clarisse to receive a formal invitation to discuss a charitable initiative supposedly sponsored by Omar and herself. The invitation was carefully worded, polite, and flattering, offering Clarisse an opportunity to contribute her ideas and skills to a meaningful cause. Clarisse, believing she was being recognized for her hard work and trusting in Omar's guidance, accepted without hesitation. The meeting was set at a quiet cafe overlooking Dubai Marina, a location chosen deliberately for its elegance and seclusion. Nadia arrived dressed in soft beige, her demeanor composed and calm, the image of courtesy and sophistication. She spoke politely, offering advice and guidance as though she were mentoring Clarisse, carefully masking the fury that simmered beneath her poised exterior. She presented a beautifully wrapped box containing the rare tea she had prepared with painstaking care. To Clarisse, it was a gesture of goodwill, a luxurious gift from the family she admired. She thanked Nadia sincerely, unaware that every element of the meeting had been orchestrated to set the stage for the tragedy that was about to unfold. Nadia's mind remained focused and methodical. She observed Clarisse closely, noting the excitement in her eyes, the trust she placed in Omar, and the naivety that made her vulnerable. The plan required precision, timing, and patience, and Nadia ensured every detail was accounted for. To the casual observer, the encounter was nothing more than a polite gesture between women connected by a wealthy man. But behind the polished smiles and courteous conversation, a sinister plan had already taken. That evening, Clarisse returned to her apartment with a sense of accomplishment, unaware that the gift she had received was anything but ordinary. She carefully unwrapped the box, admiring the delicate packaging and the rich aroma of the tea. To her, it was a symbol of recognition and kindness, a rare acknowledgement from the family of a man she trusted implicitly. She prepared a cup, watching the steam rise and inhale the fragrant scent, oblivious to the danger hidden within. The warmth of the tea seemed comforting, a small moment of luxury in her otherwise hectic life. She drank slowly, savoring the taste, unaware that every sip brought her closer to a deadly end. Within minutes, a strange sensation began to take hold. Clarisse felt a sudden dizziness that left her disoriented. Her hands trembled, and her chest tightened in a way that made her gasp for air. She tried to stand, but the room spun violently around her. Panic surged as she reached for her phone, but her fingers faltered, unsteady and weak. The walls seemed to close in, and a crushing fatigue overcame her. She collapsed to the floor, her vision dimming as the toxin coursed through her system with frightening efficiency. By the next morning, a concerned neighbor found her lying unconscious. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but the severity of the situation was evident at once. Paramedics attempted resuscitation, but Clarisse's body had already suffered irreversible damage. Initially, the cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, a plausible explanation given her apparent collapse. Yet, during the autopsy, medical examiners noticed anomalies. There were no prior indications of heart disease, and traces of a rare, potent chemical were detected in her bloodstream. The discovery would later unravel the carefully constructed facade of wealth and civility, revealing that behind Dubai's glittering skyline, jealousy and ambition had combined into a deadly, calculated act. Omar was devastated when he learned of Clarisse's death. The news hit him like a thunderclap, leaving him withdrawn and silent. He locked himself in his study for days, unable to face the public, the press, or even his own thoughts. His grief was compounded when he discovered that Clarisse had been pregnant. The reality that he had unwittingly exposed her to danger, and that an innocent life had been lost, left him guilt-stricken and trembling. Friends and colleagues noticed the change in him. The confident, powerful businessman seemed diminished, weighed down by remorse and despair. Meanwhile, the investigation into Clarisse's sudden death took a more forensic turn. At first, authorities treated it as a natural cardiac incident, given the apparent collapse at her apartment. But a meticulous medical examiner found inconsistencies that could not be ignored. The lack of prior heart conditions, the rapid onset of symptoms, and the presence of a chemical compound in her bloodstream that did not belong there. The case was reopened, and investigators began tracing every possible lead. Their attention soon turned to the luxury tea Clarisse had received, and through surveillance and purchase records, they discovered the boutique from which it had originated. Following the paper trail led straight to Nadia Al Safir. Investigators pieced together the timeline, from the purchase of the exotic tea and the rare chemical to the carefully orchestrated meeting at the Marina Cafe. Evidence mounted quietly but steadily, creating a clear chain that could not be ignored. What had once appeared to be a tragic accident now revealed itself as a premeditated act of jealousy and rage. The polished facade of wealth and civility that Nadia maintained so perfectly could no longer hide the calculated and deadly measures she had taken to protect her pride and status, forever changing the narrative of Dubai's elite circles. Nadia's arrest sent shockwaves through Dubai's elite circles, a city where scandals were often whispered but rarely confronted openly. Police arrived at her mansion quietly to avoid drawing media attention, but the news spread like wildfire once word reached staff and neighbors. The investigation had uncovered compelling evidence: receipts for the rare tea, purchase records for the chemical compound, and surveillance footage from the cafe showing her meeting with Clarisse just days before the fatal incident. Every detail pointed toward premeditation, and the authorities moved swiftly to ensure that Nadia could not interfere with the ongoing case. Inside the mansion, Nadia remained outwardly composed, a mask of elegance and calm concealing the tension beneath. She had always been admired for her poise, but the situation was no longer about appearances. The luxury she had cultivated for years, the social power she wielded with effortless grace, now felt like a cage closing in around her. Investigators searched her private spaces, finding traces of the toxin in her bathroom and hidden records that tied her directly to the purchase of the deadly chemical. The evidence was overwhelming, leaving little room for doubt. The arrest shook Dubai's social scene, where wealth and privilege often provided a shield from accountability. Gossip spread quickly among expats and locals alike, painting a picture of a meticulously calculated crime driven by jealousy and obsession. Friends and acquaintances who had once praised Nadia for her sophistication now whispered about betrayal, rage, and murder. Even Omar, her husband, was forced to confront the reality of her actions, the magnitude of the betrayal intertwined with his own culpability. The woman who had once embodied elegance and power was now facing life behind bars, a stark reminder that beneath the glittering surface of wealth and influence, human emotions could erupt into tragedy with deadly consequences. The courtroom was tense as the trial of Nadia Al Safir unfolded, a spectacle that drew attention across Dubai and beyond. Prosecutors laid out the evidence in meticulous detail, piece by piece, connecting the purchase of the rare tea, the chemical compound, and the orchestrated meeting with Clarisse Ramos. Every transaction, every interaction, and every hidden motive was exposed before the court. Nadia sat with her composed exterior intact, but the weight of the accumulated proof was undeniable. Her carefully constructed facade of elegance and control could not withstand the relentless clarity of the investigation. Omar Al Safir remained in the courtroom, silent and shaken. The affair, once hidden behind closed doors, had now become public knowledge in the most devastating way possible. He realized the consequences of his actions, the lives touched and destroyed by his choices, and the unbearable reality of Clarisse's death and the loss of her unborn child. The tragedy was compounded by the knowledge that the woman he had married and trusted had executed such a calculated plan, turning betrayal and jealousy into irreversible consequences. The verdict delivered a life sentence for premeditated murder. Nadia's fate was sealed, her influence and power stripped away, leaving only the stark consequences of her choices. The city's elite watched as a symbol of wealth and sophistication fell from grace, a cautionary tale that even the most polished lives could hide darkness beneath. Clarisse's family in the Philippines received restitution, but no compensation could undo the grief, the loss, or the shattered dreams. The story of Nadia and Clarisse became a chilling reminder that beneath the glittering skyline of Dubai, human emotions could erupt with deadly force. Love, jealousy, and pride, when combined with wealth and opportunity, could create tragedies that left lasting scars, echoing far beyond the lives directly involved. It was a tale of betrayal, obsession, and IR.